I'm glad we love each other.
Quit having fun. Ants, stop it.
Okay, welcome to our Summer Sundays. Our Kaleidoscope of Faith continues with Ron Kelley to speak about faith and science, which I think is very much. I hope you continue to come to these sessions, because one of the things that we were talking about on faith and mission, actually, it was Mom who talked about it, that we have so many people in our congregation with specializations, with special interests, with interesting lives and things to talk about. And it's such a wonderful opportunity this summer to hear from so many different people on the topics that are important to them and how that interacts with their spirituality and with their faith, which is a reminder to me how vast and diverse and beautiful and creative our God is. So continue to come and enjoy all the different subjects. Today, he's going to enlighten us on how faith and science come together. I'm looking forward.
Was that the topic for today? I forgot. Thank you, Cindy.
I'm ready to be enlightened.
Oh boy. Well, thank you all for being here, number one. And number two, Rob, thank you for a beautiful sermon this morning, very inspiring. And Meg's not here, but thank you, Meg, for her sermon in the communion, which to me is also a very moving part of the service. Grateful to be with you this morning. And I have to say that when Sharon Short emailed a few months ago asking about would I be willing to teach in this series, and I said yes. And she said, well, on what topic? And I had to think about that. I said faith and science. And it's been, only in the last few weeks or so that I've really thought about the topic very much since then. And it made me wonder, well, what in the world was I thinking about why I would take those two topics, which are so broad and so big, and try to put them together. So one of the things I'm going to attempt to do is make this a discussion, hopefully a little bit enlightening, not just about things I'm interested in, but things you think about on those two subjects, faith and science. And just a heads up on this, from my perspective, these are in concert with each other. They're complementary. They're not necessarily in conflict, although we're going to talk about things like that, the conflict as well. Overall, what I'd like to do this morning is give you a little introduction. Then I would like to have us talk about the characteristics of faith and the characteristics of science. And then I want to see where we find ourselves looking at similarities. What are the similarities that are found when you think about faith and science together? And of course, what are the conflicts when we think about that as well? And then at the end, if you'll allow me the ability to do this, I'm going to actually challenge us all to think about, let's wake up a little bit and let's think about things we're not paying enough attention to. So that's the sequence that I'd like to go through. In terms of introduction, I believe the reason I answered Sharon the way I did is faith and science have been a big part of my life all my life. I grew up as an American Baptist, was in an American Baptist church and a family that was always attending church, always there, always active, and the growing of my faith has been a big part of who I am from the beginning. Early on in my life, I had a chance to be exposed to math and science and became intrigued by it, as many of you in the audience have been. I was actually in junior high when they named the first 7 original astronauts. And I remember building, yeah, that's how old I am. I remember building a rocket in junior high that just kind of intrigued me by that whole idea, the original 7 and going into space. And then in my career, I'm a chemist by background, and in my career, I spent all my time basically over the years in science, technology, and that field, and I still find myself intrigued by it. So those are 2 big pillars for me, and so thanks for bearing with me, thanks for showing up. you're going to get asked a lot of questions this morning. So, you know, this is your chance to kind of start to leave if you feel like it's a good idea. Because anybody who knows my teaching style, I like to ask questions. So throughout the discussion, I'm going to give you my thoughts, and then I'm going to ask you what are yours. And I hope that other than John and Justin working very hard over there to get the mics pointed, please speak up so everybody can hear you when you answer a question, and we'll do our best to make sure the people who are on streaming or later on video can hear it. Confession. Confession's always good, right, in a church? This is all done by artificial intelligence. Yeah, I thought I was not going to have enough time to get ready for this because of some travel and other things that were going on. So I decided to go to ChatGPT. And I asked a simple question. I'm going to give an hour talk. I'd like to have the topic be on faith and science. I'd like to be presenting to a Christian church group. What should I do? 3 seconds later, I had 2 sets of options. Well, completely finished presentation materials, and it was just overwhelming. Some really good stuff. I glanced at it and I thought, come on in, come on in. I glanced at it and I thought, this is fantastic. If I don't get time to do the preparation for this, I'm going to rely on that. I chose not to do that until yesterday. I looked at it again after I'd done it a few weeks ago. And a few of those ideas are going to be in the talk today. So I just want to confess that this is also a little bit artificial too.
So you're an avatar?
Yeah. There's another problem with that. One of the suggestions made by AI was for the talk title, Faith and Science, Friends or Foes, Exploring the Harmony Between Belief and Discovery. I love that. Isn't that great? I'd never come up with that, I'll tell you that. As I said, I think I really want to make sure that we're looking at how we complement subjects because that's the way I view it. You may disagree with that, but I view this as complementary, not competitive. First, by a show of hands, how many of you spent in this room, by a show of hands, how many of you spent a long time thinking about faith? Quite a few of you. All right, by show of hands, how many of you have spent a long time thinking about chemistry? By show of hands, how many have a fear of chemistry? I've been surprised over the years how many times I will mention I was a chemist to somebody and there's a shudder in the body that I sense. I really see it. So it's just, I understand that. I promise no tests at the end. It's just these questions I'm going to ask you that I need your help on throughout the whole discussion. One little reference point, you know, I see faith and science as sometimes overlapping, sometimes separate, sometimes conflicting, kind of a Venn diagram-like image in my mind. But for all of us, I think we think of these subjects differently. So let's try to do in a short time something that could take hours and weeks and months. Let's characterize each of them first before we try to do anything to talk about similarities. What are some of the characteristics of science and what are some of the characteristics of faith? I'll start out by giving you a couple of things to think about and then I'm going to turn to you and ask, what do you think are some of the characteristics or how would you describe science? Science is a method of understanding the natural world. It's based on observation, experimentation, prediction. There's such a wide range of science topics if you really try to break it down, and this is an impartial list, or an incomplete list, excuse me. Electrical, aerospace, computer science, physics, biology, neurology, mathematics, climate, very incomplete list. Very wide range of specialties over the years that have developed. In my mind, I always think of science and technology together. You know, the evolution of science to technology in its specific forms. I also, you know, from experience, and all of us would probably agree with this, it's rapidly changing in a given lifetime, in a given time period. It's just changing so fast and so quickly and so energetically in some ways. That's sometimes a little bit hard to stay current. Things we were taught early on are disproven, or something we've been taught early on we find ourselves learning a little more about, or a little different depth on. Research is at the foundation of most science in the world today. Right now, research is being heavily challenged by the current administration and the changes going on there. That's a topic all by itself. But research is really the very foundation done at the university level and other places, federal labs around the world, and heavily here in the U.S. that is at the foundation of much of the science that we all know and understand today. Science is also very interdisciplinary today. Those who are not scientists probably don't appreciate how much that's happened. But as we've tried to learn more and know more and find out more, you can't just be a chemist. You can't just be someone who's involved in physics. You can't just be someone who is using one or more specialties. They're interdisciplinary, they overlap, and it takes overlapping to solve new problems. Nanotechnology developed in the material science world completely as an overlapping interdisciplinary technology, about 4 to 5 different science disciplines. So again, I'm just trying to characterize a little bit science, just so we have a kind of a common definition here. Science has no doubt changed lives. It's extended life. It's changed the quality of life. That's another characterization. And I think we're still in the midst of that evolutionary set of changes. So I'm turning now to you and I'm asking you, what did I miss on describing or characterizing science? What else would you say when you think of the word science? What comes to mind?
You have to use inductive thinking.
Thank you. You want to explain that, Bob, just a bit?
Well, you gather facts and you draw conclusions from the facts. You don't start with an assumption and try to prove it. That is more of a faith approach.
Thank you. Thank you.
I also think that it's ideological in a way that I think people miss. I think a lot of times we think of science as objective, but the reality is very often suppositions drive the research that we do, and attitudes drive that. I mean, one of my favorite exercises in class once was I showed one of the pictures that was taken from the satellite that gave us our first holistic view of the world since Apollo 17. I forget the name of the satellite now, but it's far enough back that we don't have to piece together it, we get the whole picture. And I asked the students, you know, is this an objective fact? I mean, well, on a sense, yes, this is what the world looked like the day that picture was taken. But of course, I can ask all of you, which hemisphere was being shown? Just take a guess.
Western.
Western, right. Which country was on top?
US.
Why? It was our satellite, doggone it, and we're going to take a picture. We're going to take a picture of it with us. Take a picture of us. And so I point out there was an ideological assumption behind this objective fact that sometimes we miss.
Excellent point.
For me, I like to think of science as a way of looking at the world, not so much as any specific thing, not chemistry, not even physics, which is my field, not biology, but it is an attitude, a philosophy, if you will, a belief that whatever we see in the world can somehow be explained. There is a mathematical basis, a real basis behind raindrops, lightning, pick a phenomenon. These are things that physics or that science can explain, and the goal of science is to explain a lot of things that we can't see.
If only we just study it.
It is an attitude. I would separate it from technology, therefore.
Yeah, that excellent.
Technology is a result of science.
Excellent point.
Well, I think of a characteristic of science, at least within the same field. A scientist in the United States, China, and some other country, completely different politics, they can kind of agree on the science with each other, and communicate to with one another in that science, those science ideas.
Excellent.
So
Good
that's
point,
one of the-
Matthew. Yeah.
I've often seen science and faith as actually two sides of the same coin.
Okay.
Search for truth.
Mm.
All right? We use science to explain what we think we understand,
Mhm.
and faith to explain that which we know we don't.
Fascinating, fascinating. Ben?
When I think about science, science does confirm our faith, not only our faith, our generation, but the faith of our ancestors or people of biblical time. I give you one example. When we read Genesis, God created man, and then he put man to sleep to one rib. He created woman. Why did he do that? Not explained it until just recently when we started delving into genetics. My assumption is we wanted the genes of Adam to create Eve. So the two are what? They are one. But we didn't understand it at that time. Question is, why didn't he just create Eve and not put Adam to sleep and take the rib? How could he have put Adam to sleep, take the rib without Adam jumping off in pain? We didn't know that either. Until anesthesiologists began to develop. So at that time,
Thank
it
you very
wasn't.
much. I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to keep us moving to make sure we stay on time for the whole thing. But you're doing exactly what I want. I hope you leave just having thought about this topic and gone a little bit deeper to challenge yourself on the subject. Giovanna,
So something that I was thinking when Pastor Rob was talking was about
a
certainty.
little louder.
Something I thought about when Pastor Rob was speaking was about certainty,
Mm.
like scientific facts or truths, like usually are, have been submitted to like experimentation. So at the end, like you can test, and you can prove that this is, allegedly, right, that this is in a certain way.
Excellent, excellent. Great input, great input. Well, how would you characterize faith? Many of you put your hands up. We've been doing this for a long time. I remember a number of you participated in a program that I was involved with called Journey of Faith. And we were talking about throughout that whole effort of how our own faith and our personal faith develops over time. We were doing it back before the COVID time, and we were using Zoom. Nobody ever heard of Zoom at the time. And a conclusion I came away with personally was everybody's journey is different. But faith is, if we're trying to characterize it, Hebrews 11 says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, trust in the unseen and the spiritual. Faith is, for us, a belief in God, more specifically, a belief in Jesus Christ as our Savior. Faith is also something you'd characterize as community, groups of people believing together, worshiping together, studying together. We still study together, We're still trying to understand. We're still exploring. We're still trying to make sure that we have figured out our faith. Or, best case, maybe we're trying to communicate it to somebody. And we're trying to figure out how to communicate it. The basic principles, hopefully we live out. The quality of our life should be impacted by our faith, it seems to me. That's a characteristic of faith. Interesting that Ben's in the room, and I'm thankful for that. He doesn't know I was going to say this, but I learned a lot about faith in Liberia when I was visiting Liberia many years ago. I learned that faith is not dependent on security or wealth. In a war-torn country of Liberia that we were in, it was devastated. It was unbelievable. And I met some of the most faithful Christians I had ever met in my life. So faith is something that's very deep and very personal and affects who we are. And sometimes faith helps us to see miracles, and we ask for miracles. But I'm characterizing in a few words a very big topic that you all know a lot more about than I do, and you all have a lot of thoughts. What are your how would you characterize faith?
Well, Len, I think, said that faith helps explain those things you can't explain or don't have.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that, but I also look at faith being your view of things you can count on, things you can hope for, things that you can depend upon. More of a looking forward. I put my faith in Christ, right? I'm not trying to use faith because that's not that I can't explain Christ. I think I can explain Christ. I think we have a lot of facts that we can rely upon between the Bible and history and archaeology that says, Christ was real, right? And he was resurrected, or the apostles wouldn't have given their lives unless they'd had a supernatural.
Very personal what you've described.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Ben?
In short, I would describe it as, for us Christian, it is the acknowledgement of truth. What is truth? Once we define what is truth, our acknowledgement of truth, which is Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Others? What is faith? How would you characterize faith? How would you describe faith? Rob?
I heard a description online a while back that compared belief and faith, and I can't remember exactly, but it was belief is like something you can prove. So like I can believe my mom loved me and she tells me, hey, that proves it. Faith is knowing without the existence of proof. And I really like that explanation for me. It just meant a lot. I can believe in what I see, what I can touch, what I can feel. Faith is knowing it without the ability to prove it.
Very, very different, isn't it, than what we were talking about in characterization of science a few minutes ago, because it requires a leap. It really does. Others, other thoughts, other characterizations. I think, yes.
I'm thinking about where faith and science intersect, and I think they're intersecting all of the time, actually. But an example of what I mean is, in science you have an aha moment in which the facts that you've been puzzling over gel, and you get a bigger picture, and it's like it opens up other doors. In religion, we have what we call the Damascus Road experience, in which we're going in one way, believing one way. We have something happen that changes the way we perceive what is real and important and what becomes the goal of our life.
Another aha.
It is an aha religiously, faith-wise, yes.
Excellent. Excellent points, every one of them. I think I would like to add two more real quick. One is faith gives us, in my opinion, I think most of you would agree, a moral basis for living. I also think our faith is intended to show love for others, to go beyond self. And those two aspects, I think, play a lot into this topic this morning, or should. Because, as Rob is challenging us, we have to be thinking beyond self, and we have to be doing beyond self, and we have to have that foundation, that moral foundation for why we love beyond self. Whether it's money that we're giving, or it's time we're giving, or it's because of the concern for the person who's across the table from us, that is a part of the basis of faith, completely independent of the issue of science. All right, let's talk a little bit about the similarities. I think there's similarities between faith and science. If you'll allow me that kind of, before we talk about conflicts, let's talk about the similarities. There are basic foundations for both topics. So each faith and science has basic foundations that we build off of. There are academic experts in both faith and science. We're very fortunate to have Rob, who's an academic expert in this field, here with us, leading us. But there's a similarity between faith and science in the fact that there's a foundational academic level that is really a part of both. Another similarity that I see is the more you study and you consider scripture or science, the more that is revealed and the more that we know. And you get to Bob's aha moments even. But, you know, just that process of learning and getting deeper and trying to build off of the foundation is a part of the similarities. The mysteries and the unknowns are still leaving us curious to know more. There is an awe, A-W-E, an awe feeling about both. I believe Bob just described that a minute ago, but it was a thought that I was having also as I put together this talk. There's an awe to that, and I will come back to that subject a little bit later this morning. People are at the center of both. You can't do science without people. You can't do faith without people, you know, and that seems like an overly simplified thing. But the very question about how different are we over the years, how different are people over the years, comes into that, but you've still got people at the foundation of both. What are some of the similarities that you see? Rob?
I'm going to say past performance affects future success in both.
Thank you.
That in both places, the work that you do, if it's good work, will lead you into a new place. I mean, the reason that, you know, in Faith's case, we're taking a step if we're not sure where our foot's going to land, but we're taking that step because we're trusting in a voice we've listened to and has been faithful to us over and over and over again for each of those steps we've taken previously.
The risk is less.
Yes, yes.
It's necessary,
Right.
but it's based on a foundation of something that we know. Excellent, excellent. Others, what are similarities?
Both are incomplete. We will always be discovering more scientifically, and we never stop growing in our faith unless we kill it. But both are incomplete.
Very good, very good. Other similarities? Hannah?
I didn't have much thought to it, but I just got that. I didn't have a much chance to think about it, but I just realized that both science and faith is a great source to create the power. It can be destructive, it can be saving life.
Wonderful, wonderful perspective, and absolutely I would agree with that. Lynn?
Building on Bob's point, I mean, both faith and science invite questioning, invite questions. But those very questions can also invite resistance and conflict. Question of science, my God, you're a Neanderthal, you can't exist in the modern world if you question science. You question faith, my God, you're an atheist, you know, therefore not worthy of.
Very similar. Both of them are
Both of
true.
them have the same
Yeah, they
kind of
can
dynamic.
be a perceived downside to the individual who raises the question in either case.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good point. Other similarities that exist between faith and science. Well, let's talk about conflicts then. Do you think of a lot of conflicts between faith and science automatically, Matthew?
Usually I think of science as being agnostic to God.
Okay?
Generally, most science I think they don't answer that question.
Many scientists are agnostic also.
But many scientists are believers, but the science as a whole, I think, is.
I misinterpreted your point.
Sorry,
Thank you. Thank you.
And why is that?
You know, it's seeking naturalistic explanations for things, and.
Another reason I know I thought of this topic, John Bullock's not here today, but John had given me a book about 3-4 months ago that was written by Dr. Francis Collins. Francis Collins led the whole National Institute of Health for years, but he was previously the head of the program that did all of the basic research and the evolution of DNA. And he's a very strong Christian. And he talks in the book about the language of God and how he came to be moving from being completely uninterested in God and didn't believe at all in God to where he became a very, very committed and dedicated follower of Christ. But many scientists start with your basic concern and they stay with that. Tom, you started to say something.
Yes, thank you. I think of science as something that progresses through the ages. From Archimedes to Einstein, there's a basis that develops. And when a new scientist like myself begins his education, he has all of that to study. Faith, on the other hand, to me at least, seems to be starts over again with each individual. Every individual starts their basis of faith sort of at the same place. Whether they were born 1,000 years ago or today, they have the same basis to begin with. The scientist has a different and evolving set of rules. It seems to me that the rules of faith, if you will, don't evolve in quite the same way. They have to be developed individually with help from others, but nonetheless individually.
Very good point. Very good point. What about other conflicts here? What do you see as conflicts, John? Give me a...
Well, I was going to,
maybe
those get at it, but I think that both scientists and believers can be resistant to changes to their own scientific theories or to their belief systems.
Okay.
And you know, examples would be archaeologists who have long held views about when the earliest onset of man was in certain areas, and then presented with evidence to the contrary, which now is commonly accepted, but fought it tooth and nail because they had theories with their name on it. You can say the same thing on the best example might be on the faith side would be, you know, was it a 7-day creation, or was it not? Mr. Collins, who you talked about, is a deep Christian. He's also believes in evolution. And he has his own ability of rationalizing those together.
Yeah, there's a unique situation, I think, that's by definition a conflict. That most of our Bible, you know, 2,000 years of Christ's time and a couple of thousand years before that, you know, that we're fairly sure of and we can identify with. And then there's a start that you just referred to, which we're not sure what it is. A few thousand years is not quite 4.5 billion, which most scientists would say is the time of the Earth. And the time of the universe used to be thought of in the numbers of, you know, 13 to 15 billion years back, but now they see it as closer with the new Webb telescopes and other things. They see it as closer to something in the neighborhood of 35 billion years back. So 35 years, 4.5 for the Earth, 2,000 or so. You know, it takes a lot to try to rationalize that possible conflict, and for some it's a big conflict. Yes, Cindy.
This is not necessarily where they're different, but both can engender fear in people who are resistant to change, but also that fear of the unknown. Where I grew up, it was often said, you know, too much education could be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because it makes you, you know, it introduces you to things that then may pull you away from your faith. So there was no marriage in the minds of my community of faith and science. There was no marrying that, because if you went this way and got too much education, it was going to pull you away from your faith.
Interesting.
And in the same vein, though, even other faiths, it was fear of the unknown. You know, there was fear of both in some respects, but definitely when it came to science.
So if I hear you correctly, not only fear of the categories that we sometimes grow up in of other religions, but this fear that if we learn too much or we know too much, it might push the boundaries of us accepting this thing we believed in faith for so long. I think it's an excellent point.
Yeah, I also think one of the differences for me is that science doesn't require belief. I don't have to believe in the vaccine for it to work. I don't have to believe in the aspirin to get rid of my headache. But belief is foundational for faith, that notion of trusting.
But you have to believe it to choose to use it.
Well, you would have to believe it to take that step, yes.
Yeah.
But that again is
Martha.
an ideological.
Martha.
We used to have a gentleman here from, I've forgotten whether it was Wales or Ireland, a scientist, and I remember him standing up one time, and I guess we were talking about things like that, and he said, sometimes my faith wavers a little, and then I look back at my science as it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and the deeper it goes, the more I realize that there is still below it. And he said, that increases my faith.
That's powerful. That's
It is.
powerful.
It really is.
Very powerful. Lynn.
Well, you mentioned the conflicts, but each has, it seems to me, an inherent internal conflict. All right? You know, we tend to think.
Each topic, each
Each topic,
subject. Mhm.
science
Okay.
and faith, I mean, we tend to think of them as kind of absolutes, potential opposites. But each contain elements of the other.
Absolutely.
All right? Scientists, even the agnostics, have complete faith that they can find an answer to the natural order of things if they dig deep enough. That's a tried and true faith every scientist I've ever known has. Keep asking the questions, you keep experimenting, you will find an answer. Okay? On the faith side, even those who are so strongly faithful or fundamental that they reject science, they still use the benefits of science without acknowledging that, perhaps. You know, if they're farmers, they're using modern agricultural techniques to grow their crops. They're taking advantage of modern technology in terms of transportation or whatever. I mean, even the Amish, for example, or whoever. I mean, we were just on a trip to Kentucky, and we were startled by the sight of a huge group of Amish folks coming out of a bus, going to the Shoney's Big Boy restaurant, you know, on some kind of road trip that they were having.
And that bus with foot pedals.
I don't know, but, you know, they might have been Mennonite.
I'm actually going to circle back to some of what you were referring to, not the Amish.
But, you know, even those folks who are
Yeah,
deeply
yes,
faithful
yes, yes.
do have to take advantage of science in some respects.
A quick transition now. I think
Before we
something.
transition,
Go.
let me add what I see as the biggest conflict.
Okay.
It's the way we think about science and the way we think about faith. And when we try to use our faith presuppositions and impose it on science, there's gonna be a lot of conflict. And when science, likewise, arrogantly positions their way of looking at things on faith, there's gonna be big conflict. So the conflict is the way we think about each. And when we seek to impose one set of processes on what doesn't fit the other.
That's very perceptive. I think that's really powerful too
Ron,
for
can I
me.
follow up on that real
Yes,
quick? 'Cause
yes.
I think that's an excellent point. Some of the biggest problems we have had in the 20th century in the church were in places where individuals accepted the precepts of scientific truth as the standard and then either endorsed them, like, for example, rejecting the miracles of Jesus because that's supernatural, or doubled down on why they're scientific. I mean, you have fundamentalists using science
Right.
as the standard by which we measure truth, and we're gonna get into trouble when that happens.
That was
it's
the
really
internal
interesting.
conflict I was.
Right.
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
think all of that ties together to me too, because it's really challenging us as Christians, individuals, whether we're scientists or not, to think about the fact that we might be, participating in that, by definition, that conflict. That's a powerful thought. In the short time that we've got left, and I'm going to make sure we do end on time, I'd like to present a quick thought about where I think there's some commonality with both of these topics. And then I would like to lead into a challenge that is, it's a personal opinion and you can reject it or accept it, but I'm going to describe that in a minute. But let's start with something I think is very common between both subjects, and that's the word awe, wonder. I can think of a number of examples. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 real quick, and then I want you to just give me a few examples also. I wouldn't be at all surprised if John McFarland next week has some awe pictures for us. The beauty of God's creation, awe. People of faith, people of science, you can just see there's an awe to that. The mystery of the universe, what we don't know beyond us. Think how that's evolving, changing in our knowledge, but still how much we don't know, the mystery, the awe of that. The mystery of the human body. For anybody spent any time in the medical world, any time in the issues of science that deals with the body, or if any of us have had the kind of challenges that we've all had at different times, the body and its mystery is awe, a wonder that we learn more about and learn how to deal with more all the time. Nature, storms, complexity of people, all of this to me are examples of awe and wonder that I think people of faith and I think people of science look at those in similar ways and are amazed by it. So my last question before I end up with a challenge to you is, do you have any other examples you'd like to share that are awe to you?
I think it says in Psalms, but I've also experienced thinking how small we are in comparison to the size of the universe or the size of God, and that creates this kind of...
I love the notion of in the Bible of the grain of sand, and yet God knows us like a grain of sand, and yet we're so small. Those two together just go, whoa. John?
You're talking about Dr. Collins and the book that he wrote about the science of God, the language of God, and he was talking about the genetic code. And I mean, it's just incredible what we have been able to discern about that. But what's more incredible to me is my belief that that was all created by God. And we used to talk about intelligent design, but this gets much more detailed. And whether God set this in motion 1 billion years ago, and we happen to pop up 20,000 years ago, to me, that is awesome.
Yeah, excellent point. Marilyn?
In my life, at my age, I'm finding that people are beginning to be interested in the topic of consciousness, human consciousness, or maybe
What? I can't hear you. Human consciousness.
or possibly even we know. I mean, dog lovers will tell you there's consciousness in a dog. And for me, it only points further to the creativity of the power in the universe from God.
Excellent. Excellent.
Has to be.
Two more, and then I'm going to keep us on schedule. I promise. I'm going to keep you on schedule.
Okay. Every civilization has its creation story. But I've always been struck by the one we have adhered to, the one that we grew up with, and how it seems to me a perfect intersection of faith and science. imagine, if you will, you're a shepherd tending your flock. You only know your natural environment, nothing else. And somebody comes along to you and tries to explain, how did you come into being? How did the universe become formed? And Genesis has a perfect explanation. God said, let there be light. And it's the most succinct definition I've ever heard of the Big Bang Theory.
That's a powerful model to think about. They're not necessarily different from each other, you're saying. They actually explain each other. Cindy, I'm going to let you be the last question
Okay, so
or comment.
recent research has found that trauma literally changes your genetic code and can be passed down generationally. And when I first read and found out about that and read more about that, the one thing that came back to me was in the Bible where it says, the sins of the father are passed down to the children's children, are passed down through generations. And so for me, I was like, oh my Lord, God tried to tell us and we didn't understand. And here we are, this many years later.
One thing begets another.
Yes, and proving that literally, genetically, we are changed.
And another thing you're reminding me of is how that knowledge of the code has shown us that we're all alike. We're all not different. We may have thought we were different in our early years of faith and science, but we're not very different. If I can, I want to call this a wake-up call. Probably isn't for most of you, but it might be for a couple of you. So I'm going to call this a wake-up call. My challenge is a personal one. I think on both faith and science, we get so caught up in our world, what me is doing, whether it's my selfie caught in my phone, whether it's just me worried about me and my immediate family, whatever the self side of things are, we are so caught up in self that we lose the ability to practice our faith, to ask for help from God, to ask for help from others, to figure out maybe other people have solutions to this problem, my mental challenge, my physical challenge, something that needs to be looked at. And no, I'm just caught up in me. So my first thought is about faith. We often try to do it ourselves, do everything ourselves, instead of asking for God's help. That's a fundamental basic challenge that I think we do that too much. We forget about the power of prayer. We forget about the power of prayer and what God can do to give us wisdom, guidance, or healing, so many things. We forget about the community that's around us that we can use and help from. We forget about something that is clear in our faith about the need for miracles. And I know we ask for them, but do we believe in them? Do we really, really personally hope for a miracle, pray for a miracle for ourselves or somebody else? I also think in science, I'll finish this a little bit nerdy probably. That's my nature. But I think in science, I'm challenging us to say, wake up. Do you really realize how much is out there? Do you really realize how much has changed, how much we know, how much we're able to do now that we weren't able to do? And you know, my grandfather, one of my grandfathers, was a telegraph operator, and he was in a two-story building because he physically switched the tracks when the trains were coming. He did Morse code to tell the train, and the train said, we're coming. Switch the tracks. It was before electricity. I mean, it's after electricity, but anyway. I remember that was Morse code communication. I watched him do that. And we're headed for artificial intelligence next. I think we are in a time where we don't look around and realize what's in the science world around us. So an example or two. One is picture the chemistry periodic table. When the phone was first made, the first mobile phone was made, 12 elements were in it. Today, out of the 118 elements, 75 elements on that chart are in your phone. Do you have any idea that that was true? Huh? And rare earth elements is a big issue. Have you ever heard? 75 of that. Do you know the human body only has 30? Your phone has 75. Human body only has 30.
Why my phone is smarter than I am.
I'm just saying. I think we don't.
The phone was invented. What was the number? 12.
12.
12.
12. The mobile phone. The complexity of semiconductors, I wouldn't expect you to understand that if you're not a scientist. You never spent time on it. But we used to talk about transistors that were this big that Bell Labs made, and that's what was the on and off device that was put in most computers in the early days. And then the semiconductor came along, and when that was invented in the late 50s, they figured out how to put it on silicon or germanium, but they put it on a metal and made it conductive. So the transistor became down on a flat surface now. Today we talk about nanotechnology and we don't even realize how severe. Picture a meter this long, a meter. And now I want you, between my hands, divide 1 billion slices. 1 billion. That's a nanometer. So you're going to slice it down to the billion. And that's how we're building our semiconductors today. A chip size of my little fingernail holds 100 million transistors. Those transistors, 100 million of them there. That's just one simple example. Another example, cancer treatment, chemotherapy. I know what Ethel's gone through, and so glad to see her. So much of the diagnostic equipment we have today, the things that these ladies do, Allie does in the NICU unit, you do in the brain unit, stuff you do with equipment. It's completely different than what Faye did when she was a nurse, right? The level of knowledge we get in diagnostics and information and the level of depth of information that we've got now available to us to extend our life, or at least understand our lives better, has just changed dramatically. Think about that every now and then. My challenge is to you, don't just fly over that all the time. The science that's generated this is amazing. The same would be true for the next generation of CRISPR technology that's going to help modify things. The same is true for all of the transportation issues. It was only 125 years ago that Orville and Wilbur figured out how to get off the ground. I went to Iowa last weekend in 2 hours, on a plane. We tend to underestimate what's happening in science right in front of us, and it's a faithful thing to think about. My key takeaways for all of this are faith and science are not enemies. Both can deepen our awe of God. We've got to embrace this mystery. God is bigger than our individual knowledge and categories. And it's just at the rate at which things are going, if we don't have the moral foundation and the love for others at the heart of what we're doing, then all of this could get away from us quickly, including artificial intelligence, but just as easily the CRISPR technology and coding and DNA and every other aspect of things. We have to continue to have a faith foundation that allows us to look at science and to think of it in a way that's good, not bad. Thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.